All right. Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of Work Hustle Balance. This is the podcast for the modern day worker, the modern day hustler, and that person that's just trying to balance it all. And maybe you're all three. If so, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome in. We are super excited to meet the one and only, the legendary. I'm excited to have this person on this podcast to meet them, learn more about their background, and just get to know them as a person. So everybody give it up for Bara, Mann.
What a welcome.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you for being on this show. So give us your introduction, give us your pitch, tell us about you, and then we're going to dive all the way into it.
All right. Well, hi, Letitia. Thank you so much for having me on here. I've been really enjoying your podcast, and I am a transformational life coach and speaker. I'm a former engineer from the corporate world. So I've got background in a bunch of different places, and I help people cultivate lives filled with joy, happiness, and inner peace.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that on so many levels, simply because of literally our conversation right before here, right? We're just vibing off of the fact that we get to be, camera free for an introduction. And this is our first time meeting each other. I love that we met on Threads. So if you guys aren't familiar, this is the Twitter version, based and backed by Meta, but I'm loving it so far because I meet incredible people like Bara, who's, building transformational experiences, transformational wellness. This is what the society needs, especially in this work hustle environment where we're literally trying to find balance. So what kind of steered you into this direction? How did you come about to doing what you're doing right now?
I think the big thing that led me here was not knowing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was in the corporate world, as I mentioned. I was working as an engineer in the oil industry. And when the pandemic started happening, things started slowing down. I started meditating more, getting more in touch with myself. It suddenly became clear that I wasn't meant to be doing what I was doing for 40 hours a week.
Yep.
And it was the other stuff that I had to do was too important for me to spend 40 hours a week on engineering. But the only thing was I wasn't really clear on what that other stuff was, where I fit in. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur before. I didn't really know what I liked or what I wanted to do. I just knew what I was doing and what I thought was a good fit for me. So I kind of had to start from scratch to figure that out. And, it led me here through a lot of twists and turns, but I also realized there's a lot of other people who are in a similar situation who need that support.
Yes, definitely. And I'm excited to dive into some of these twists and turns. So hopefully you can share and shed more light. But I love exactly how you ended that. People need this, especially at this time. There's a ton of layoffs that are happening in the tech space, in the tech world. If you didn't know, I actually came from the tech space myself. I was a tech recruiter, so I know all about recruiting for engineers such as yourself. And, that was a grind, working for literally Amazon and Meta and having to do that. And I kid you not, Bara, I was laid off during my maternity leave from Meta. So I know how much people are looking for, this sense of joy, this sense of culture, this sense of confidence when, you feel like that is kind of stripped from you a little bit, at least from the corporate space, if you kind of dedicated that, your entire world into that. So you mentioned these twists and turns. Tell us a little bit more about, kind of your journey that led you here. Because I think there's somebody that may be listening that's like, oh, okay, yes, I resonate with that.
Yeah, I'd love to share. So I think that the first key to my journey, before I even thought about leaving my career, was meditation. That's where I started. So I think a silent sitting meditation where I was just getting quiet and focusing my mind and becoming more present with my body and what's actually real versus like all the stories that constantly run in our heads that often drive the hustle, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And then from there, it was expanding my spiritual practice was incredibly helpful. I know that's something that you talk about a lot, but starting to develop this understanding that, hey, like my brain doesn't have all the answers, but there's all of this knowledge out there that I can access, you know?
Yes.
And that kind of kicked off with when I thought about leaving my career, I hired my own life coach. And that was one of the best decisions that I've ever made for myself. I think if, you know, we could try to piece everything together for ourselves, try to read a million books. That's what I was doing before. But like, why not hire someone, if you're in a position where you can do so, who's already navigated it, you know, who knows all the shortcuts and has accumulated that knowledge for you.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. And so she helped me to trust myself more and to also like feel safe embarking on this spiritual journey.
Right.
Cause it's kind of a scary thing to do, especially if the people around you have different beliefs, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to use the word battle, but definitely been through kind of a similar thing where, I have friends, and now I think I'm at a place where within my own spiritual journey where I do acknowledge and honor all faiths because, at the end of the day, if you, to your point, we don't have all of the answers, right? Like we did not place ourselves here, right? There must be something greater, higher, bigger than ourselves. So the fact that, a society, a person, a human, an individual can identify that, I think that's just one step further, in progressing and becoming a better human, a better person, right? Individually. And then we as collectively become better people. I just have my own personal bias on what that spirituality is, but I honor all of them, right? So I totally understand, especially, when you have varying beliefs all around you and when you're kind of going into this space of trusting something that you cannot see. I think that's the biggest thing that, especially when people are leaning on me for like spiritual encouragement. It's like, hey, you're going to have to trust this thing that you don't see. So I love that, you were able to have this life coach. So what was kind of the greatest impact of having that life coach? Like, what did they do or say that, was maybe the top three or maybe like the pillar to your own transformation that encouraged you to become a transformational life coach yourself?
I think one of the biggest things that she said to me was like on our last day working together, and she asked me if I'd ever thought about talking to my guides and asking them what they had to say about all this. And for anyone who's not familiar, you could think of as like just the way some people see God, basically. It's like a very
ancestors,
similar,
right? Like, totally understand.
Yeah, totally similar kind of energy experience. And I said, I'd never thought about that, but I'm interested in it, especially once I heard someone that I trusted suggest it. So I think it was that same day or something, I got an email from meetup.com about this 2-week long connecting with your guides event by the Healers Roundtable. And I was like, okay, like I see like what's going on here. Clearly this is something I'm meant to participate in. And that led me onto this journey where I started getting into different types of energy healing and experiencing them and then training in them. And that rapidly accelerated my own healing and opened me up to all of these possibilities.
Wow.
And also that whole process eventually taught me to like ask for what I want, So there was this point where I said, that coach, the relationship we had, it was always planned to just be 5 sessions. And towards the end of it, initially I thought she was going to help me pick my new career. But towards the end of that, I said, I don't want to pick my new career. Like I'm not ready yet. I need to figure out who I am.
Yep. I love it. And that's where you became this, or what kind of happened from that point to where you are today?
Well, from that, I went on this whole spiritual journey with discovering different types of energy healing. I was really isolated for a lot of it because I didn't think anyone could understand this. I bet, I can imagine when you in the beginning might have been uncomfortable to tell people about your conversations with God,
Yeah.
Or a lot of people would be, at least. And so it felt pretty isolating. My own identity was kind of crumbling because all these things that I thought were important to me, I realized weren't. And fortunately, I found a great mentor during this process, a spiritual therapist. She calls herself now a spiritual mentor, who was able to help guide me through all of this. And then since I had this connection now with my guides, this different relationship with God than I used to have. I used to be afraid to ask for anything because I'm like, well, what if that's not really what I'm supposed to have? I think I got this from listening to a lot of country music when I was growing up. I was like, it's like God's greatest gifts sometimes are unanswered prayers. I was like, well, I don't want to pray for the wrong thing.
Right. I totally understand.
Yeah. And so eventually I just asked, he said, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to know what I'm meant to do. What is it?
Yeah.
Show me. And then people started calling me more, asking me to coach them.
Wow.
Not officially, but like so many people were calling me for help and guidance in their life. And it was right after I posed that question. So I was able to connect the two and say, okay, clearly this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Wow. That is incredible. That's incredible. So how long has it been for you? How has that journey been? Just kind of getting to where you are, especially life coaching, right? Like that's such it's just such an impactful role, in society. So, from the time of, you kind of doing that to now, how has that been? And how have you kind of been able to separate the work from the hustle there, right? Because it is definitely, it's your job, it's your career now, but it's also something that's life fulfilling and gives impact. So tell us some more about that.
Yeah, I left my old career about 3 years ago.
Nice.
And I think it's been probably about 2 since I realized it was life coaching, and maybe even less since I started actually calling it life coaching.
Right.
I had a big aversion to that for a while. But I love how you asked about the separating from the hustle, because I figured that out towards the end of my corporate career. I was like, the man is not going to control me. The man is not going to stop me from getting my steps in and getting my meditation in and eating healthy. I'm going to take breaks when I need to. And I was really good about that.
Awesome.
Then I went on this whole break kind of from traditional work. And when I started realizing what I was meant to do and was starting up my own business, I, without realizing it until someone gave me this language, became the worst boss to myself. Because it wasn't like, before I was like standing up against the man, now it was like there was no one to stand up to. And all that stuff from the past clicked in, like, oh, it's really important that you work hard to get ahead. And,
No, totally. And I think that is, I don't want to call it a problem because there are so many things that are accomplished when you work hard, but it is really about, I use the word balance, but I like creating harmony, like with, whatever you're doing, right? Sometimes you may have to work hard, but sometimes like you might have to chill and not do anything, right? And just rest and just breathe and just be, a human. So I totally resonate with that. And, you posed a question before we got on the call and asked, how would I define hustle? So for me, it's kind of a noun and a verb for me, right? Because in my culture, right, you got to have a hustle. Like you have to have something that's going to give you more than whatever, more as in some type of passive income or some type of additional income is going to bring in additional supplementary income on top of whatever you're making, right? So I was a very young mom. I was a mom of my 19-year-old daughter when I was in college. And my biggest fear was like, her not eating. So I was like, I need hustle, like literally the noun, right? But then it started to literally, for me, become a verb where you're like, okay, I'm like constantly go, 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 go. And I became like hustle Tisha, where it's like, I'm always constantly go. I'm always constantly go. And I had to give myself permission, very similar, right? Being that boss to myself, but I had to give myself permission to pause. You know, I had like, and honestly, I truly believe that God had to force me to pause and like, I don't, you know, discredit any path that God has us on, each individual person, because, you know, it does warrant whatever great things are there. I do ask for what I want. I have learned about that. But to your point, right? Same thing. I listen is like, oh, well, you want God's will as well. So the way I pray, I'll be like, hey, God, I'm like, hey, God, I want this thing unless you have something better. So if it doesn't pan out, I'm like, my mindset is, okay, God has something better for me because he didn't give me that thing. So it's just, you know, kind of my little positive way of looking at that. But I, you know, thinking about how your background is really all about, you know, cultivating that joy, that positivity, and being a catalyst for positive change. Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like and kind of how you're able to champion that for either your clients, your, you know, audience when you're speaking, whoever, you know, is the recipient of being that positive change.
You know, I think that some of it is what you mentioned. You kind of mentioned this. It's like how we choose to look at things. Like, is it God's not coming through for you? No, maybe it's God has a better plan for you. Maybe what you're going through is really, really rough, but maybe there's a reason for that, you know, and being able to look at it and say like, okay, how can I take this hardship and turn it into a gift for me?
Right. Exactly. And it's kind of like, you know, when you look at it from that perspective, it allows you to see joy in things. And, you know, when I read that in your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, just because I've been reading so much about joy, the difference between joy and happiness, and how like happiness, I read some quote that's like, you know, happiness is based on what happens. Like, you know, it's like very, very circumstantial. But if you got joy, you can look at any situation and say, okay, something amazing will come from this. But it takes a very strong mindset. It's not an easy thing to do, for sure.
The cool thing is, though, you can train yourself to do it. So it's like, you know, a deadlift isn't easy the first time you try to do it.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, but you start with a light weight, you know, you get the right training, you go in with the right form, and you can do it with a little bit of weight, you know, and then eventually you can build up, and eventually you'd say that same deadlift from the beginning is easy, you know?
So I love that analogy because biasly, my husband's a personal trainer. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So as a life coach, you're pretty much helping someone like train their mindset, you know, kind of fit like how we are training our bodies, or would you say it's more or less, you know, how is that? I'm so curious now on this particular analogy.
Yeah. So there's more to it than that. Cause you know, I also will help people to like really uncover what's there and come up with the right strategies for them. But one of my favorite things to do, which I do through coaching, or sometimes I do through just a separate program, literally on positive intelligence, is exactly that. Training. It's not even just training your mindset. It's not even just creating a pattern around thinking a certain way. When you do some of this stuff, you're actually activating a different region of your brain. So it's actually training and like building up the muscles. I'm saying that with like finger quotes right now that no one, but it's not literally muscles, but you basically are building up the muscles in your brain so that that's the first thing that kicks in. So if your husband's a personal trainer, like you might have some experience with this. Like when I first walked into the gym and like I've gone to physical therapy, you know, for help with something. And they're like, you're like, why are you lifting with your back? You know, you're supposed to be, you should be lifting with your legs. And then they said, well, actually, we know why. It's because you're so used to using some muscles and you're not used to using the other ones.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that's what's going on in our brains right now is most of us spend so much time in these fight or flight regions of our brain, or fight or flight might be a little extreme, but like the survival regions of the brain, the left side of the brain, that like really logical, analytical thinking, that's what's firing for us naturally because it's what we're always using.
Right. Wow. So kind of like you're used to thinking certain thoughts. So that's where your mind's going to always go.
Yeah. And if we start, so that's where your thoughts are going to be tending to go right now, but you can train them to go somewhere else. And you can also literally train through one of the things that I use with folks is they're called PQ exercises or positive intelligence reps. We do these little exercises to bring their awareness back into their physical senses, and that activates that other region of the brain. So from there, it's a lot easier to access positive thoughts.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Wait, I'm about to be a client because I'm like, wait a second. I love this. This is so incredible. I read this book called The Untethered Soul. And like, as you're telling me this, like little like excerpts of that book is like coming to mind, and like just literally untethering your soul, which was is such a good book. If you guys have never read it, highly recommend it. It's pretty spiritual. It's a little heavy, but it's definitely a highly recommended book. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. So tell me what's next on your journey, especially as you are finding balance, finding harmony, you know, in what you do, especially, you know, because what you do is so impactful. You're pouring into a lot of people who need this. How do you ensure that you stay, you know, balanced, harmonized, that your cup is, you know, you replenish your cup from pouring out? How are you able to do that?
It sounds like you were in my journaling practice this morning.
Love it.
So yeah, I want to address that second part about how I stay replenished and keep my cup full. One thing that's super important to me is like a non-negotiable is my morning practice. And for me, that consists of every morning doing some focused awareness. You could call them PQ reps. You could call them mindfulness meditation to focus my mind where I want it to be, which a lot of times is the breath or whatever. Or literally like rubbing two fingers together. That's my favorite one. Rub two fingers together and just bring your awareness to that sensation. And when the mind wanders, as it will, bring it right back to that sensation.
Okay. Awesome. Love this.
Yeah. And as you do that, you notice that your mind is settling, you're calmer, you're able to think more clearly. And starting the day with a practice like that really helps to tune you to be in that position better for the rest of the day going forward.
How long do you do this for?
So what I've been doing is recently I do that for about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Wow. I used to meditate for about 20 to 30 minutes in the morning. Recently, I started adding in some breath work, some Wim Hof style breathing to the beginning of that practice. So that's the first thing that I do. Actually, first, I always clear and shield and protect my energy with just a little 1 minute practice because so I'm not picking up everyone else's anxiety and worries and things like that. And then right now I'm doing 11 minutes. It's an 11-minute guided thing that I'm doing where I'm breathing deeply and fully, and it feels good. It opens my heart, helps focus my brain. Then I go into 15 minutes of focused awareness, traditional meditation. I didn't start with that. I started with literally 2 minutes. So if anyone's listening to this and is like, that's overwhelming, 2 minutes is a really, really good starting point. Like start with easier than
the light weights.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the deadlifts.
Yeah.
Love it.
Start with something you can for sure handle.
Okay.
And then the other part that's really important to me is I do my spiritual practice of like connecting with my higher team or God. That to me is really important to just open up and say, hey, what should I know today? Like, what do you want me to keep in mind?
Right.
I usually bring in crystals into that practice. And that helps like tune me up and strengthen my intuition and stuff. But just even asking that question and then writing down whatever comes through without judgment.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And very similarly, I haven't meditated per se, but I'll do the exact thing. Like me and my mom, we have this prayer call. Like I'll read the Bible. I literally cannot do anything until I read the Bible. We'll pray and then I'll ask that same question, right? This is why I honor higher powers because when you ask, what would you have me to do? Like, that's the question that I ask. I'm like, okay, what would you have me to do today? And it's the same thing, right? Like, you have to be ready for whatever is, whatever the answer is, right? Because that's obedience, that's submission, that is, what's going to take you higher. And I always say, like, the people that get their prayers answered are the people that are willing, like they're willing to accept not only just the things that they want, but also the very best because they're asking and they're submissive, if that makes sense. I can't even, I'm getting so fired up and excited about it because, there's so many people that are living their best lives, without a better phrase, because they're not afraid to ask, because they're not afraid to submit, and they're not afraid to say, what would you have me to do? Which I think is so important. And I love that.
I think it's so important because if you're asking this question, but the whole time you're like, no, but I want you to tell me this one thing, then it's like, that doesn't count, And sometimes I'll get an answer I don't want. Like, I'm for sure. I'm really tired. I want to be told to like rest and relax. And it's like, no, like rollerblade, listen to some good music and change your energy. And I'm like, oh man.
Yep. 1,000%. I remember for me for a long time, it was a spouse. It was a spouse. And I literally remember, oh my gosh, I remember praying for this with this one guy that I was dating. I was like, God, and I do a lot of fasting, right? So I would fast. I was like, God, I'm going to fast for my husband. Please send my husband. Wink, wink. Let it be this guy right here. Let it be this guy. Oh my gosh. And then it was crazy because like every time after I fast, God immediately gives me my answer, like immediately. And like afterwards, it just like abruptly ended. I was like, all right, okay, well, if that wasn't like a telltale time, but then I just got to, whatever, have your way, whoever you would have for me. And then he presents, the best that I could ever ask for. So like, I agree, like a 1,000,000%. And to your point, like, it's really just about just being, being open, being free and obedient, So even if it's not what you want to do or what you want, I think the taste might change. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's another point where we can have a conversation too with God, or like you mentioned, you had to get stopped like in your tracks to like slow down.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, and that may have been true in your situation. And I think at times in my life, things like that have been true for me. But I think sometimes people put so much weight on that, or they're like, this is the only way it has to be.
Right.
I'll have this conversation where like right now I'm trying to figure out, where I want to live permanently. I've been, doing some traveling. And my conversation, was that I wanted clarity. Well, then all this stuff started happening that was like really distracting and not pleasant. And then I had another conversation and I said, hey, like, can we do this? Like, let's do this gently. Like, even if this isn't the place for me, like, I will trust that and I will know that. Let me still have a good time while I'm here. Like, this doesn't have to be a painful process. Like, please, like, let's make this feel good and give me the clarity that I need. And I think we can set that in too, like, if this isn't the guy for me, help me to know that and to move on. And, if possible, I don't need you to teach me the hard way.
Right. Agreed. Oh my gosh. That's so awesome. I love this. I could sit here and talk about this literally for hours, right? Because, as you're saying that, right, I'm on like another segue. I'm like, yes, because, there are these people, right, where because they're not ready. I don't know. Right. And I don't want to judge anyone. I'm not going to judge anyone. But if you're not willing to say like, or if you have this more constructed, oh, nope, this is exactly what I want, how I want it, when I want it, blah, blah, blah. Right. You do miss out on the best that could present itself if you're kind of living this, your own self thoughts and not giving room for that. So I'm definitely about to try this meditation practice. I'm going to pick up the small dumbbells first with the 2 minutes, and I'm going to work up to the 20. So tell us, what's next for you? I'm sure people want, especially as they're listening, like, hold on, if your life coach could do what they did for you, how can you do what you do for them? So how can people get in contact with you? And then what's next for you?
So actually, one of the things that might be the coolest, you said you want to start trying out small. On my website, I've got a free 3-minute guided exercise. So I'll send you that. If you want, you can link it.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to, start that practice for yourself and get to know me a little bit better, my energy and my voice. And yeah, if someone start there, that'll give you all the ways to contact me. If you want to do that, you'll get access to my website and everything. And then if you're ever interested in working together, if anyone's interested in working together, it always starts with a free conversation. And then if it seems like a good fit, right now I'm actually doing a free coaching session before making that commitment. Because
cool.
I don't want anyone signing up to work with me or to do any of my programs unless they truly 100% want to. And
1,000%.
Yeah. The gym membership is not going to change your life, but going to the gym is going to change your life.
Agreed. Oh, that's awesome. Love that. Well, Bara, this has been absolutely incredible. Just getting to know you, getting to know your story, getting to hear your journey. And obviously, this is not the destination. There's so much more that we are going to experience from you, especially guys, if you're listening, you better grab your free 3-minute guided practice and a coaching session while you're at it, because you've heard Bara's story, you've heard what she's overcome and how, she's able to help those that are looking to live a more transformational life, that's looking to cultivate that joy, that confidence that you need, in your life, and be able to really create that catalyst for exactly what you need to become the best version of you, to give you that positive change. So, Bara, thank you. I honor your presence. I honor your energy that you brought here with us today. So I want to honor you. Any last things that you want to leave us with?
I'll say the best moment to change is now.
Wow. That's it. Don't wait, guys. The best moment to change is now. Awesome. Well, until next time, guys, this is Work, Hustle, Balance. I will see you on the next episode. Until then, keep working, stay hustling, and always, always, always be balanced. Have a blessed day, and see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.